Colonel Claire Bennett had spent 40 years obeying orders, packing fast, moving on. Retirement came with one clear impulse: go home and see her son. On the overnight flight from Afghanistan to Miami, she sat awake, thumb pressed to the old pocket watch her father had given her before her first deployment, picturing Daniel Bennett, the son she'd watched grow into a successful architect in Naples, Florida. They hadn't seen each other in nearly 2 years, too many postponed calls. This surprise visit, she told herself, would mend the distance. At dawn, the taxi turned into his quiet subdivision. Every house was neat except Daniel's. Grass overgrown, mailbox stuffed and tilting, curtains clamped shut, blue paint peeling. Before she could knock, neighbor Susan Parker, clutching a watering can, hurried over, face drained. In careful fragments, she told Claire. 2 weeks earlier, Daniel had been taken by ambulance straight to ICU at Naples General, and Melissa, his wife, had not gone with him. She was on a yacht in the Keys, posting parties and shopping sprees while Daniel lay alone. Minutes later, Claire was in another cab headed for the hospital, heart pounding harder than it ever had under fire. The ICU corridor hummed with machines and soft-footed nurses. Outside room 512, Dr. James Porter met her with tired eyes and blunt honesty. Daniel had advanced gastric cancer. It had spread to his liver and lymph nodes. If they'd caught it earlier, there might have been options. Now there were none. He had been there 2 weeks. No visitors, Porter added quietly. Inside, Daniel's skin was waxen, his frame sunken, his body threaded with tubes and wires. Claire took his hand, forcing her voice to stay level. She asked if Melissa had been notified. Porter said they had called. At first she'd said she was away and would come, then stopped answering. Daniel's eyelids fluttered. For a moment, past the drugs, his hazel eyes focused. "Mom," he whispered, "you're really here." "I'm here," she said, gripping his hand in both of hers. "I love you, Mom." The words were thin but clear. Before she could answer, the monitor's steady beeping stretched into one flat tone. Nurses rushed in. Someone eased Claire into the hall. She listened to the rhythm of compressions and commands until Porter emerged, shoulders heavy. "I'm sorry, Colonel Bennett. We did everything we could." She had come home too late. Back at Daniel's house, heat and silence met her. A half-empty bottle of scotch and dirty glasses sat on the table, takeout boxes spoiled in the sink. Rectangles of clean paint marked where photos had once hung. Claire set Daniel's effects on the counter and attacked the piled mail. Overdue notices, shut-off warnings, late mortgage slips. Daniel had always been disciplined with money. This decay was wrong. In his office, among scattered folders, she found receipts. Tens of thousands for a Key West yacht, jewelry, luxury boutiques, resort stays, all charged during the exact days Daniel lay in ICU. She found no sign Melissa had been there caring for a dying husband. Claire located a charger, powered Daniel's phone, and hit the video call icon. Melissa appeared on a sunlit yacht deck, sunglasses on, cocktail in hand, music thumping. When Claire told her Daniel was gone, Melissa's smile faltered for half a second. Then she shrugged. "It was inevitable," she said. "He'd been sick." When Claire mentioned the spending, Melissa gave a careless laugh. "I'm his wife. What's his is mine. That's how marriage works." Claire ended the call. Her fingers closed around her father's watch. Grief sharpened into resolve. In a leather portfolio embossed with Daniel's initials, Claire found the durable power of attorney he had signed, naming her as his agent, properly notarized, never revoked. The next morning she drove to Tampa to see retired Colonel Martin Cole, now in military financial administration. She laid out the POA, the receipts, the hospital timeline. Martin's expression hardened. From his office he called banks and compliance teams, citing exploitation of an incapacitated individual and the valid POA. One by one, Daniel's accounts were frozen, cards canceled, remaining balances moved to a holding account under Claire's authority. The due mortgage payment was pushed through. As she left, her phone vibrated nonstop. Voicemails from Melissa swung from rage to pleading, demanding access, invoking her status as widow. Not once did she say Daniel's name. Claire ignored them. Back in Naples, she began to treat the house like a battlefield after impact. Survey, secure, gather evidence. With Susan and her son Ryan quietly mowing, fixing, and bringing food, Claire worked through Daniel's papers. In a worn notebook, she found lists that turned into logs. Dates, amounts, notes. Payments for Melissa's procedure, roof repairs, car transmission, her mother's emergency surgery. Cross-checked with statements, they matched spa treatments, boutiques, a luxury watch, travel. Melissa's mother had been dead for years. In Daniel's archived images, Claire found a screenshot of texts between Melissa and friend Tara Reynolds. Tara teased her about playing housewife. Melissa wrote, "Might as well enjoy his money while I can. Doctor says he won't last long. Already started moving funds to my personal account." Claire took the POA, receipts, notebook entries, and messages to attorney Jacob Reed, a former JAG specializing in estate fraud. Reed listened, reviewed the documents, and laid out a precise plan. Seek an emergency court order to maintain the freeze and grant Claire temporary control, alert the insurer, and, using the financial trail, build a case that Melissa had systematically exploited Daniel while he was terminally ill. Back at the house, Claire opened the fireproof safe in Daniel's closet. The combination her birth date unlocked his careful archive: passports, key documents, and several labeled USB drives. On his laptop, one drive revealed meticulously organized backups and a report from private investigator Sean Miller. Melissa's pattern appeared: relationships with wealthy men, abrupt exits, missing funds, a brief marriage that ended in a lucrative settlement. Taped inside the safe was a small envelope with her name. "If you're seeing this, I didn't fix it in time," Daniel had written. "Plug in the blue drive. Everything you need is there. I'm sorry. I love you." On the blue drive, a video played. Daniel, thinner, eyes shadowed, looked straight into the camera. He explained the diagnosis: stage 4 gastric cancer. Admitted he hadn't told her so she wouldn't abandon her final deployment. Then he spoke of Melissa, her reaction to his prognosis, her questions about life insurance, the missing money. He described hiring Sean Miller, saving records, updating his will so Melissa would receive only the minimum required by law, the rest directed to specific trusts and charitable purposes. "Mom," he said in the end, "I know you'll do what needs to be done. You always have." Claire watched until the screen froze on his face. Then she called Jacob Reed. That night, they listened together to recordings Daniel had captured. Melissa's voice complaining she'd married for security, joking about moving his money, speaking of his death as an inconvenience. Reed's verdict was calm and lethal. They now had direct, corroborated evidence. The emergency hearing was swift but tense. Claire sat straight beside Reed. Across the aisle, Melissa arrived in a flawless black dress, face arranged into controlled sorrow, flanked by attorney Patrick Lowe. Judge Deborah Klein reviewed the filings. Reed presented their case: Daniel's terminal illness, Melissa's absence from his bedside, the luxury charges, the valid POA, Sean Miller's report, Daniel's video, the recordings. Lowe argued that joint assets were marital property, that the recordings might be inadmissible, that Claire was a grieving mother punishing her daughter-in-law. Then a short excerpt of Melissa's voice played in court, her saying Daniel won't last long, that she'd already begun moving his money. A murmur moved through the room. Judge Klein asked Claire what she intended if granted control. Claire answered simply, "Secure the estate, honor Daniel's documented wishes, prevent further exploitation." The judge ruled all estate assets would remain frozen. Melissa was prohibited from accessing funds or property. Temporary control was granted to Colonel Claire Bennett pending full probate. The gavel fell. Melissa shot up, mask cracking. "You can't do this. That money is mine. The house is mine." "Sit down, Mrs. Bennett," Judge Klein said, "or I will hold you in contempt." "Outside," Reed said quietly. "We've won the first round. She's not done." When Claire and Reed returned to Daniel's house, the front door was open. Inside, drawers were ripped out, shelves emptied, bags half-packed. Melissa and 2 men were stripping the place. As Claire stepped in, Melissa let a framed photo of Daniel slip from her fingers. It shattered on the floor. "Just collecting my things," Melissa sneered. then hurled accusations about Claire's absences and Daniel waiting for calls, each word meant to wound. Claire stood steady. Reed called the police and read aloud from Judge Klein's order barring Melissa from removing property. One of the men edged forward, then backed off when Reed mentioned the restraining provisions and incoming officers. Calculating, Melissa dropped an expensive vase to smash beside the broken photo. "Take this dump," she said. "I made sure the mortgage is stacked. Good luck, Colonel." The police arrived within minutes, photographed the damage, took statements. Recovering what she had taken might be difficult, they warned, but Melissa had now violated a court order, more weight on Claire's side. That night, after the locks were changed and alarms set, Claire swept up the glass from her son's shattered photograph. Grief pressed down, but beneath it something steady held. Daniel had gathered the truth when he was too weak to stand and placed it in her hands. Now, with that evidence and her training, she intended to finish the mission he could not. In the days that followed, Claire and her small circle turned evidence into structure. Martin Cole dug deeper through official channels and confirmed what Daniel's files already suggested. Melissa had pushed through a second mortgage Daniel had never needed, funneled large sums through joint accounts into an online bank, then toward a Cayman Islands account. The pattern mirrored the histories in Sean Miller's report. This was not one impulsive spree. It was a method. Jacob Reed compiled everything: the POA, account records, investigator's report, Daniel's video, Melissa's own words, the break-in after the court order into a file ready for prosecutors and financial crime investigators. They could not control how fast the system moved, but Claire would make sure it had no excuse to look away. At the same time, she faced the part only a mother could complete. With quiet resolve, she arranged Daniel's funeral with full military honors. In his updated will, now formally validated, Daniel directed that after debts and legal costs, his remaining assets would fund scholarships for underprivileged architecture students. Melissa's share was reduced to the minimum the law required. Even in dying, he had tried to turn loss into something that might build instead of destroy. On the morning of the funeral, under a clear Florida sky, Claire stood by the flag-draped casket as the rifles cracked and the bugle sounded. She closed her hand around her father's pocket watch, its weight steady in her palm. Daniel had gathered proof of the betrayal that hollowed out his final months and placed it in her care. And Claire Bennett, soldier to the end, meant to carry that trust through every hearing and every hard step ahead, until his name, not Melissa's greed, defined the legacy he left behind.